Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Los Angeles Times, continuing coverage of the reaction to the decision by the United States Supreme Court today, overturning a 50-year precedent extending the constitutional right to legal abortion to women in the United States. Now it goes back to the states to decide whether they will keep that ban in place or keep in place the 50 years of legalized abortion that American women have had. We're going to be talking throughout the afternoon with Times staff writers. Right now we have Anita Chabria joining us, the Los Angeles Times columnist in Sacramento. Anita, thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for having me on.
You have written and thought about this as the decision, not as a Supreme Court decision per se, but as the tip of the spear for an agenda of the far right, of extreme nationalists, and what the consequences to that might be to other rights that have been of almost equally long standing, whether that's same-sex marriage or the right to private consensual sex, whether it's gay or straight sex, to the right even to contraception, which was enshrined as a constitutional right in 1964. How do you see that operating?
You know, I think it's such an important lens to look at this through. So I spent much of today talking to those who study extremism and who study far-right movements. And what they all say is that this is a log on the fire. This isn't what's making the fire. This is just one piece of something that's been happening for more than a decade, and that is going to continue to happen with other rights and in other forums as we go forward. So on the side of our rights, we are going to see challenges to gay marriage and even to same-sex relationships and things that we really just can't even imagine in America, like the rights to, you know, your privacy in your bedroom are now up for grabs. And you are going to see the Supreme Court go after some of those cases as well in the future, because that is part and parcel of the far-right agenda. But you're also seeing it in your local towns. You're seeing it on your school boards. You're seeing it with the fear around LGBTQ rights and a lot of people trying to bring up that fear of grooming that you see all over now, which is just another far-right trope. So across society right now, you're seeing the far-right agenda infiltrate in all these different ways, and Roe is just one of them.
Now, the Supreme Court is obviously, to people who are of this mindset, a tool to accomplish this, but is the Supreme Court inclined to go along with this? Because some of these are undoing even more rights that are considered fundamental. Rights to, as you say, the privacy of sexual conduct in your bedroom, of the so-called anti-sodomy laws, which were thrown out long ago, the right to have contraceptives even within a marital relationship, the right to interracial marriage, which goes back even farther.
You know, I'll point to two things that happened today that I think are so significant. One was Clarence Thomas and what he wrote in his opinion, which clearly called out those rights as possibly not being on solid legal footing. When the first draft of this decision leaked, you saw that the justices took some pains to say, okay, well, we're just talking about abortion. It doesn't really apply to anything else. But Clarence Thomas said today that, yes, it does. So absolutely, this is a court that will go there. And the second thing was Trump's response to this. So he tweeted out today that he had delivered on all his promises. And I thought delivered was such an important word in that tweet because, you know, we tend to blame a lot of the last few years and the shift to the right on him. But he's just delivering on a playbook that he was handed. So putting those justices on the court wasn't really his agenda. It was the agenda that was handed to him. And now you're seeing the results of that. So yes, is as unbelievable as it sounds, I do believe that the court will go after those other rights.
And would the court do essentially what it has done for Roe, which is say, all right, there's no federal right to any of this, but you states, each of you figure it out, 50 states at a time? Or would the Supreme Court essentially close the door, as it did on gun regulations only yesterday, to states even making their own regulations about these matters?
I think, you know, I'm not the legal scholar, but my understanding is that these fall more under the Roe issue, which would send it back to the states, right? So effectively, the states would be the end authority on these things. And I think you see some of the Republican senators really grabbing onto that today. And I think it was Judge Hawley said today, you're going to see a greater split in the country. You might even see migration in the country as people move out of states that suddenly have a very different kind of government than they're comfortable with, or move into states seeking that kind of more Christian right government. So yes, I think you're going to see states have tremendously more power under this court.
We've seen this described as kind of a great sort, whether you're starting with the Civil War or more recently, that people tend to move to cities, to environments where their professional pursuits are more welcome and there's more opportunity, or to seek more affinity kinds of states that, as you say, look to places where they'll find people who believe as they do. And that, as Josh Hawley from Missouri, a state that was the first to criminalize abortion on the wake today of the Roe versus Wade decision, Josh Hawley said red states will get redder and blue states will get bluer. Do you think that that's plausible?
Exactly. I think that's exactly what could happen. I mean, it's really going to play out. This isn't something happening tomorrow, although you'll see abortion. You've already seen states stop it today. So that is happening right now. But I think you're going to see states that aren't a welcoming environment for people of different gender identities or for the LGBTQ community. I think you're going to start seeing states that have personalities that are very conservative. And I don't know what that'll mean in the long run, but I think we're about to all figure it out together.
You just reminded me of something that happened years ago when I'd written a column about a woman who was a leading atheist activist here in California. And I had gotten a letter in response from a woman in Oklahoma who said in her letter that she and her husband were atheists, but they went to church just so their neighbors wouldn't suspect. And could I please have this organization send along to her some materials, but put it in a plain wrapper so that her mailman would not know that she was receiving information from an atheist organization. And that goes exactly to what you're talking about.
That is exactly it. And I think what's so hard for us to understand in California is that there are enough critical mass in certain states where you could see something like contraception perhaps be outlawed. That's one of the cases that the Supreme Court could look at, where you could see restrictions on not just same-sex marriage, but same-sex relationships, even, as you said, in the privacy of your bedroom. In California, it just seems so impossible to us. But there are states that could become a reality.
You wonder at what point even a population that's sympathetic to, for example, banning abortion will say, well, but you can't tell me what kind of sexual activities I have in my own bedroom, or you can't tell me that I can't use the pill or an IUD, and decide that this is the line that they are drawing.
And it's going to be state by state, right? If these rights fall, that will be exactly it. Every state will have to decide for itself what it's willing to tolerate and what it's not. We just have taken for granted in America that there's a certain assurance of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it turns out it's zip code dependent.
As I said earlier, the idea that your rights would depend on the zip code where you were born, where you find yourself, is really a shocking one for a lot of Americans. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who supported abortion rights, had warned that the privacy right was a pretty fragile pedestal upon which to base Roe versus Wade. Is there any option or crack in the door that the Supreme Court has left open in any of the writings about the Roe decision that would say, well, you can't base it on privacy, but come back at us with something else?
Again, I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not a great mind on that, but I will tell you this. I think that what Roe did, because it went so far away from precedent, right? It basically just threw out precedent. It threw out years of rulings and said, nope, this is the direction we're going. That now it has undermined the court's standing to such a degree that we don't know what the court will do. Could another court conceivably, if there were different members, come back and completely go the opposite way on Roe? Well, now we do have a precedent for making that kind of 90-degree turn. So I think that beyond Roe, the trust in this institution is so undermined that I would guess most of us feel that we don't know what it will do in the future.
We saw a Gallup poll yesterday, not even today, but yesterday, saying that only 25% of Americans had confidence in the impartiality, the fairness, the gravitas, I suppose, of the Supreme Court. Anita, what is the umbrella agenda of the radical right, of the white nationalists that you're talking about? It isn't just for people not to get abortions any longer. What is this part of?
It's for the country to be ruled by a group of white Christian men. And I can't say that any more clearly. It sounds like the plot of a movie. I know that. But white Christian nationalism is misogynistic. It is racist. It, combines white supremacy. It does not believe in democracy. It believes that this country was founded as a constitutional republic and that it was never meant for everyone to have equal say. So you're really looking at a group of people who believe that they should have superior rights and superior power based on race and religion.
And the Supreme Court as a tool to that, is that one of the most effective means, because they have been stymied legislatively, nationally in some instances, not always in the states. California and the western states are certainly a bulwark against it.
I want to believe in the Supreme Court and that institution will regain its credibility and believe in its value for protecting democracy. Each of those justices plays a great role moving forward in determining whether we remain a democracy or not. And I'm going to choose to be optimistic that they believe in democracy and understand the important role that they're playing right now. But all of our institutions play a part in this, any government institution. And that's really the point of misinformation and disinformation and all the conspiracy theory you see out there right now, is to make all of us not know what is true and not know who to believe and who to trust. So all of that together is coordinated. It's meant to make us not know who to trust and therefore trust nobody.
What would a society that carries out all of these things on the wish list of white supremacists, this nationalism, exactly look like? How would it function? Would it indeed be Gilead in A Handmaid's Tale?
I think that's what we don't know, and that's the worst case scenario, the fear, right? If you don't have democracy, what do you have? I think that the powers that are pushing to undo the government that we do have maybe don't know themselves, right? It's the push to achieve something, and yet none of us know what that would be. But I think that rather than focus on what that horrible end to all this could be, I would like to focus on the fact that we're not there and that we all still very much have the individual power to make a difference. This is a moment, I spoke with Holly Mitchell today, our supervisor, about some of these issues. And she made the great point that for her as a Black woman, this has never been, the freedom to pursue happiness and inequality. She has always had to fight, and her mother has had to fight, and her grandmother has had to fight. So this is never, the promise of America has never really been fulfilled, and we've always had to fight. So this is not a lost fight, and this is not a done deal. It's just a moment when we all have to commit to democracy and really make a stand and be individually involved in that fight.
Holly Mitchell is one of the 5 members of the LA County Board of Supervisors, 5 women on the Board of Supervisors, so I expect we're going to be hearing more from that body about that, which brings up the question now of elections, because although Donald Trump appointed 3 of the justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade in the decision today, he also, according to news reports, is privately telling his colleagues and friends that this is a terrible ruling for the Republican Party. I don't know what he thought was going to happen when he made these appointments, but the November elections are coming up, the midterms in which the Democrats are expected to lose seats and even lose control of one or both houses of Congress. How is this decision going to play out, do you think, Anita?
That's what every pundit out there is talking about today, right? I mean, we can guess and we can point to different things, but I think we really don't know. Our colleague Mark Barabak wrote a great column today that showed that suddenly abortion as an issue for Democrats has just skyrocketed, and they're much more interested in the fall elections. not so much for Republicans. I don't know. It's still, November's a long ways away. Our gas prices are still $6. We have a lot of other issues that people are concerned about. I don't think we know how this will play out yet in November. And the truth is that a lot of people are ambivalent about abortion. Most of us want it to remain legal, but legal to what point, legal how far along, there's a lot of questions there. So I think we don't know what will happen in November, but we have to take it seriously and push that message to vote, and not just to vote, but to support candidates who support democracy.
Bill Clinton once talked about ideal abortion laws where abortion would be legal, but it would also be rare. So that's probably that middle ground that you're talking about there. And there are other issues like the state of the economy, gas prices. People may vote those before they choose to vote about the abortion issues. We've seen before, guns was rarely a top priority voting issue for Democrats, but it was for Republicans. The same thing with abortion, especially with evangelicals. And you're saying that may play out again even in the wake of this decision.
I do. I think so. And I think, guns won't go away as an issue either. You bring it up. That actually, most extremism experts very unfortunately and sadly expect that we will see more gun violence this summer. That's something that's going to continue. And it could be that guns remain a bigger issue in our minds because of that. I also think with this other Supreme Court ruling that basically knocks down concealed carry permits, you are going to see more people armed. You're going to see perhaps people armed at protests and things like that. And I think that is something that we're going to have to keep a close eye on, and how people feel at this particular moment in time about actually seeing more guns on our streets rather than less.
In the 1960s, the right was galvanized by what was called the Impeach Earl Warren movement. You would see bumper stickers on cars. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the former governor of California, because of decisions about school integration and about civil rights, that on the right there was a very angry mood and an effort to impeach. And federal judges can be impeached. It's extremely rare. It happens through the United States Senate. But does the left feel galvanized, motivated enough to even start talking about something like that, Anita?
You mean with the Supreme Court justices?
With the Supreme Court.
There's always that talk about should we expand the court or not. I don't think that there's political willpower to get that done. I mean, you could never get it through. I just don't think it would ever happen. And as much as I personally, this court does not reflect my values, I still want to believe in that institution, right? It's worked so far. I hope that we can find a way to make it work going forward. But I don't know that there's willpower right now politically to get anything that would change that.
Anita, you're going to be writing more about this. We can find it on L.A.Times.com later today.
Yes, something will be up.
That is once we give you the time to do it. Anita Chabria, my fellow columnist at the L.A. Times, thank you for your insights. And I'm sure we'll be following you on Twitter and at L.A.Times.com. We can read what you have to say about this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You can keep following us as we talk about this, the repercussions of the Roe versus Wade decision by the United States Supreme Court today, ending that 50-year precedent of legal abortion as a constitutional right for American women. We're going to be talking a little later about the impact and the sensibility in Washington and here in Los Angeles as to how these rights may be shaking out, what California is doing to protect those rights, and how you may find yourself being involved in this just because of who you are and where you live, more than you might expect. So the LA Times coverage of the repercussions of this will continue. I'm Pat Morrison. We'll be joining you again at the top of the hour.